It's Monday, September 8th, 2025, an absolutely crazy turn in one of the biggest deportation raids yet. I regret to inform you, the Libertarians are at it once again, and if I were king for a day, here's the first thing I'd do. Next on the AM Update. Well, the South Korean government has reached a deal with the United States to secure the release of hundreds of illegal alien workers detained at a Hyundai automobile factory in Georgia. Homeland Security investigations said 475 people who were in the country illegally, primarily from South Korea, were arrested as part of the operation at the under-construction battery plant. Hyundai owns the plant but claimed none of the workers were directly employed by the company. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says the country will send a charter plane to bring the workers back to South Korea in the coming days. South Korea's foreign ministry issued a statement last week to express concern and regret over the raid. So we see all these headlines last week, this giant, massive raid, nearly 500 people at that automobile facility in Georgia, and you're thinking illegal aliens from like Mexico or Central America. Nope. They were illegals from South Korea, and yes, they can go back too. We have some new numbers as well on the amount of deportations. Immigration and Customs Enforcement deported 145,419 illegal aliens from detention centers in 6 months, including self-deportations. That's according to official data from a FOIA request covering deportations through July 31st of this year. I'm just telling you right now, if that really truly does include self-deportations. And I don't know if the qualifier detention centers necessarily means anything here, but only 145,000 deportations. Those aren't just rookie numbers, those are freshman numbers. You got to up those numbers. Meanwhile, the debate continues over whether or not the United States should have used lethal force to take out some narco-terrorists in a boat off the coast of Venezuela. Here is Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Don't you wish your Secretary of State said something like this for your entire life?
No, you're wrong in your question. Number one, Venezuela is a major source, and the reason why is the following. And I've seen a lot of this reporting, and it's fake reporting, and I'll tell you why. It says that somehow Venezuela is not involved in the drug trade because the UN says they're not involved in the drug. I don't care what the UN says. The UN doesn't know what they're talking about. Maduro is indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York. That means the Southern District of New York presented the evidence to a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted him. And then a superseding indictment came out that was unsealed about a year and a half ago that specifically detailed Maduro's actions. So number one, let there be no doubt, Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice.
Boom. I mean, why couldn't we have had a Secretary of State? Every Secretary of State should be saying things like, I don't give a what the United Nations says. I don't care. Don't care about what the United Nations says. We're going to do what we think is right for our country. J.D. Vance, Vice President, got in on the action as well. He said on social media over the weekend, quote, "Killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military." Some lefty named Brian Krasenstein replied saying, "Killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime." J.D. Vance responded and said, quote, "I don't give up what you call it." Right on the money. Now, this prompted the ire of Libertarian Republican Senator Rand Paul, who says, "JD, I don't give up." Vance says killing people he accuses of a crime is the highest and best use of the military. Did he ever read To Kill a Mockingbird? Did he ever wonder what might happen if the accused were immediately executed without trial or representation? What a despicable and thoughtless sentiment it is to glorify killing someone without a trial. So there is Republican Libertarian Senator Rand Paul. Now, before July 13th of last year, when President Trump nearly got his head exploded on live TV, I've said on and expressed on numerous occasions, if ever elected to President of the United States, I believe Rand Paul, more than maybe any other person, probably has the highest likelihood of being successfully offed. Because this guy just possesses a petty vindictiveness that makes people hate him. Hell, his own neighbor tried to kill him. And most of the time, and I mean this as a dark and morbid compliment, because 95% of the time, I agree with everything Rand Paul has to say. 5% of the time, though, it's like, what are you smoking? Probably something that's not legal. Maybe that's another reason why you're a libertarian. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller put the issue to rest.
The drugs killing their kids are coming from Maduro, and also the criminal aliens killing their kids are coming from Maduro. So he's sending his drugs, he is sending his killers, his assassins into our communities, and he's working directly with other designated foreign terrorist organizations like the FARC in Colombia and all the Mexican drug cartels. So it's one continuous loop. And for decades and for years, for generations, we used our military to engage in action against terrorists in the Middle East and in Africa, while leaving unharmed the terrorists in our own hemisphere who are responsible for so much more American deaths, so many more American deaths, who have spilled so much blood across the Western Hemisphere, who have bereaved so many parents and families, and who have contributed to such a horrific cycle and just nonstop, relentless surge of violence in our cities. Every major city in America is suffering from cartel violence. Even the U.S.-based gangs are working directly with these cartels.
There is White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. For generations, we used our military in the Middle East while leaving the terrorists in our own hemisphere who are responsible for so many more American deaths, he said. That is absolutely right on the money. You know, Rand Paul might have a leg to stand on if last week we had completely obliterated a drug-running boat off the coast of, like, Thailand or the Philippines. He might have a leg to stand on. But this is our own hemisphere, as Stephen Miller just pointed out there. I've long maintained that if we could take out Osama bin Laden in Pakistan in the dead of night, you mean to tell me we can't go headhunting for cartel bosses in Mexico? The math doesn't add up there. Well, another twist in the story of notorious Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The looming possibility of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's latest deportation led to global Google searches for the small African nation of Eswatini. Eswatini, when I was growing up, was known as Swaziland, largely surrounded by South Africa and partially bordered by Mozambique. It has a population of 1.2 million people. So there is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Maybe not going to be deported to Uganda now, certainly not to Central America. He said basically every single country in the Western Hemisphere, I guess he told the feds, every single country in the Western Hemisphere that you've offered to deport me to, I fear for my life. So the United States is saying, fine, go to Eswatini, country most people didn't even know changed its name. How do you like them apples? I love that. That should be the modus operandi for every single example that Democrats tried to plant their flag in Maryland man. Now he's going to be Eswatini man. And now there's this before the break. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson discussing Trump and Epstein. Listen to this.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down.
Excuse me? He just dropped. Did I miss that? Here's Mike Johnson again discussing Trump and Epstein.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take
an FBI informant? Hey, folks, maybe next time you might want to lead with that. Was President Trump an FBI informant to try to take down Jeffrey Epstein? Because that's what Mike Johnson just casually in conversation just seemed to drop. Unbelievable. Well, when we come back, a major institution in Washington, D.C. is getting a major name change, and 2 mega viral stories from over the weekend that we need to catch up on, and more. That's coming up next.
Thank you, and it's an honor to sign this, and we will do that right now.
There is President Trump signing an executive order to officially rename the Department of Defense.
I think that's a big one, I'll be honest.
To the Department of War. So, aesthetics, that's basically all that it is. It's a cool name change. There's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in the Oval Office standing behind President Trump. Very happy, changing the Department of Defense to the Department of War. I don't know, maybe if nothing else, it signals a change in thinking over there. Just a psychological change. We're not playing defense. We are the ones on offense. I don't know. I mean, it's just aesthetic. Nothing else. Well, there's a couple of stories that went mega viral at the exact same time. I'm not the first person to make the connection to both of these stories. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, haunting new video revealed the terrifying moment a homeless ex-con allegedly fatally stabbed a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee in what police said was a random attack on a Charlotte, North Carolina light rail train. Irina Zerutska, who fled war-torn Ukraine for a safer life in America, was on the Lynx Blue Line just before 10 p.m. on August 22nd when she was ambushed. The surveillance footage released Friday by the Charlotte Area Transit Systems shows Zerutska boarding the train in her pizzeria uniform at 9:46 p.m. and sitting looking at her phone, unaware of the danger behind you. Now, mind you, Irina Zerutska, this refugee from Ukraine, just sitting there minding her own business. She looks like she's maybe 5'4", 5'5", maybe 110 pounds. She is a tiny little thing. Just sat right down in front of this demon, who then flips out his pocket knife and stabs the life right out of her for no other reason than she just sat down in front of her. Just sat down in front of him. This man, 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown Jr., had been arrested nearly 24 times and released every single time. Every single time. And finally, all of those releases, catching and releases, led him to this point where he just stabs the life out of this poor, helpless, harmless Ukrainian refugee for the crime of sitting in front of him. And then there's this story that went viral at the exact same time. This is from People magazine. After a young baseball fan's special moment turned sour, his favorite team went above and beyond to make it up to him. As the Philadelphia Phillies worked to secure a win over the Miami Marlins on Friday, Harrison Bader hit a home run, leading to some commotion at Miami's Lone Depot Park, as captured on NBC Sports Philadelphia. After several Phillies fans attempted to grab the home run ball, one fan secured it before walking back to his spot several seats over to give it to a young boy, dropping it in his glove and giving him a big hug. But the young fan didn't have the ball for long. Almost immediately after the man had the baseball, another fan, who seconds earlier had attempted to grab the same left field homer, followed him back to his seat, where she grabbed his arm and appeared to berate him, as seen in the viral footage. Fan-captured videos also offer a closer look and reveal some of what was said between the two attendees. "That was ours," the upset Phillies fan told the man. "No, you took it from me," the man responds. Now, the woman who came over to berate the man and the young boy for stealing her baseball, she looks to be about in her 50s. She's got kind of that pixie cut, that short haircut. She appears to she just looks like every single woman, middle-aged white woman, who drives a Subaru. You know what I'm talking about here. Now, the worst part of this story is that the dad, who got the baseball for his son, folded like a cheap suit and gave her the baseball. Now, I'm not the only one to connect these two viral stories over the weekend. But the reason why we have a 34-year-old man who had been arrested, mugshotted nearly 24 times, to be released each and every time so that he could then turn around and stab to death a harmless, helpless Ukrainian refugee. The reason why we tolerate that is because society is utterly tailored to the Karen at the baseball game I just described. Utterly tailored to her every whim, the white liberal boomer woman. And then the other problem, the reason why we tailor to that woman is because the men, just like that dad, fold like cheap suits. Like I said, I'm not the only one to make that connection over the weekend, but it is ironic. Those two stories trended at the exact same time. And now here's this. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. asked recently, what are some of the successes he's seen at HHS and their sundry departments?
Well, I don't think there have been successes. I think we've seen a 30 or 40-year decline in the agency because, it's been infiltrated by the pharmaceutical companies. And they've made a series of bad decisions. And we saw the bad decisions during the opioid crisis. We saw the product of agency capture when they teamed up with the industry and with doctors, with the medical community to promote these products. And now, that launched a tsunami of addiction in our country. So this has happened again and again. And what we want to do now is put an end to it, to end those entanglements, those corrupting entanglements with the pharmaceutical industry, and make this again a gold standard science agency that is protecting the American public.
So there's RFK Jr., HHS Secretary, asked, what are some of the biggest accomplishments in public health over the past 30, 40 years? And RFK Jr. says, I don't think there have been any. Now, I'm as skeptical of public health and the public health establishment as anyone. I don't know how you could not be if you're an honest person who's lived through the last 5 years or so. But even so, when RFK Jr. says, I don't really think we've seen any accomplishments over the last 30 or 40 years, even I was like, are we sure about that? 0 accomplishments? And then I thought about it for a while. On whole, I think he's actually right. There are some breakthroughs, we think, every now and then. But if your public health is failing, then there really haven't been any successes. And the data shows, and this is the drum that RFK Jr. has been beating ever since he, ascended to his post, the chronic disease epidemic. Make America healthy again. We're a sick country. If you have a sick country, your public health establishment is not really going to have any accomplishments to speak of. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. Comedian Tim Dillon joined the Joe Rogan Experience recently, and they talked about just about everything. Those two dudes can talk about probably anything for probably 24 hours straight, I would guess. The topic of motherhood and parenting came up, and comedian Tim Dillon had this interesting thing to say. It echoes something that we talked about just a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, on the AM Update. Listen to this.
Well, but this is part of the problem in Western societies is we've told women that being a mother is not as fulfilling as working in a Fortune 500 company.
Right.
And I don't know any women that are mothers that regret it or are unhappy. Most of the happiest people I know are women with children.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, they're very happy if that's what they want, and if they're very miserable if that's not what they want.
I'm not saying they all should have children, but there's a lot of people. When you meet a young couple with children, I've never met happier people personally.
Yeah.
Than that.
So that is comedian Tim Dillon on the Joe Rogan Experience, talking about what ails the Western world when it comes to motherhood and childbearing and child rearing. That sounds really similar to something we talked about not too long ago on the AM Update. You'll remember UK pastor Jamie Bambrick had that excellent thread about how the country of Georgia in Europe reversed remarkably in about a decade and a half, reversed their falling birth rate. Georgia experienced one of the lowest birth rates in Europe, about the same as what we're facing here in the United States, and they turned that around in about 10 to 15 years. And what did they do that? They involved the church, and they created culturally a culture of actually edifying and actually pumping up motherhood, championing motherhood. And that's how they turned it around. They reversed the stigma of being a mom and what being a mom means and the job that is and entails. That's how they turned it around. And that's what Tim Dillon is talking about there. So if I were king for a day in the United States and you asked me, hey, what is one thing that you could do? It wouldn't be instantaneous, but what is one thing you could do immediately that would have the most lasting impact on society? Here's what I would do. I would turn on the USAID propaganda machine. And I would start to buy every single mommy influencer and absolutely turn on the propaganda machine in favor of motherhood and fatherhood as well, and manhood. I would turn that on. We have this really nasty, and probably rightfully so, nasty thinking when it comes to the word propaganda. It doesn't need to be that way. If it's good propaganda, if you think about it in a certain way, every single spin you hear, whether it's good or bad spin, depending on your worldview, that is propaganda. So don't get this heebie-jeebie over the word propaganda. But if I were king for a day, in line with what Tim Dillon was saying, what we talked about with the country of Georgia, turn on the propaganda machine and start to return motherhood to a symbol of status in a country, like it should be, and we've gotten so far away from. That is going to do it for a Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.